right. So we're just waiting for a few minutes for everybody to come in, but it looks like we are live, and we are joined by, of course, the legendary Nick. Nick, how are you doing?
Well, thank you so much, Smile. Great to be here. Great to have get the audience together, and we got a nice show to put on today. I see we have a full list of items to cover and can jam, so lots of good stuff to going on.
Yeah, absolutely. When we first started doing this, I was actually thinking, maybe we're gonna start running out of topics after the fourth or fifth episode. But there's just an infinite amount of topics to discuss, and as the week goes on, I just select thing. People usually make great suggestions, or I think of something, or I see something, and I just put it in a list, and we end up having a good show usually every week.
Oh yeah, how many songs are there? That's how many topics we can do.
That's well said. Well said. So, what's new with you, Nick? Anything new?
Well, my I was having problems with my preamp, my Macintosh preamp.
Oh,
Well, I wasn't really. There was a bad cable or something. I wasn't getting any sound out of it. So
right.
it was a good time to tear everything down, clean, make sure everything was all cleaned up, put it all back together, test everything out. Everything's good and clean. It looks pretty. The only thing I have left to do now, besides enjoying, is to run Dirac for my RMC1. So once I run that, the theater will be set up. But I was just listening some good tunes, all tube powered. So that's what I've been up to. That took that's a lot of work to tear it all down and test it because I thought I had a problem. And human nature is, oh my God, it's the end of the world. It's the most expensive thing is broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
99% of the time, it's the least expensive and easiest problem to fix, but you have to hunt it down to find it. So
Which cable? Which cable was it?
I'm guessing it was a cable that went to my custom switch. I have a switch that I had made by
Oh.
Canadian Maple Tree Audio in Canada. They made me a custom switch. It's beautiful, and I can select from three preamps, two sets of power amps, and two sets of speakers. So everything runs through there, and no hum, no buzz. So it makes for having a lot of different choices, which you can hear the same song played, I don't know, three times, two times two, do the math, and you can figure out how many different sounds it can make. And that's without changing any settings to the DAC. So it's
Nice. Nice.
fun. I imagine I could listen to the same song for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours and not hear it the exact same way.
Nice. Nice. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
had I had a similar kind of crisis too with my integrated tube amp. It was just not sounding right at all, and at first I thought maybe I just wasn't feeling the sound because it was right on the border of obviously broken or maybe it's me. It was kind of right on that edge, and I felt really discouraged because before I was loving the sound, and then it sounded kind of hollow. It sounded like the center image wasn't. There was a lack of focus, and previously, my tube integrated was easily outclassed the my solid state HE9, and then I figured out what was wrong. It was the my speaker tap cable wasn't there's some problem with it with the taps and the speaker tap cable. Something was wrong with the spades. I don't know what it was, but anyway, I switched to a banana cable, and that then it fixed it, and I was so relieved and happy. And the sound that came out of it, it was the sound I remembered, and I said, "Wow, it's." I appreciated it even more once I got the sound back.
That's
Right.
awesome. That's awesome.
I understand.
Yeah.
Remind us, Smud, which two pre did you get?
Oh yeah, the device I'm talking about is the Elekit TU8600S, but the Tube Pre, which that's been fine. I haven't had a problem with that so far. Is the Audio Research Ref 5 SE. That's what I have.
Oh
So it's
no,
okay. Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing Tube Preamp.
always first class with you, Smud.
No, this is. This is like a 10-something-year old. Like it was an old. It's an old flagship, basically. I like doing that. I like buying like old, like higher end, but older, so that I don't have to burn too much cash. And
Well,
it's
it's
fun. Yeah,
vintage. It's
yeah,
it's with. See, I am vintage. I never use that word. When you get my age, you'll figure out why. I was just
uh,
Micaiah and
Co's
Ku.
here. Co.
Oh, hello, gentlemen.
Well, smart. I wouldn't say a 10-year-old flagship is vintage by any means or even old. With
Right,
hi-fi, you reach a certain point to where things have a a pretty good lifespan. I feel like 20
right,
years is vintage, and anything newer than that is still good. I mean,
right.
it's not top of the line, but I've got a 20-year-old Lin Genki CD player, and it's the optical. The BNC out of it is still a lot better than USB, a lot better than some of the digital to coax converters that I've come across.
Right,
So for a
right.
20-year-old piece of tech to still sound better than equivalent products now that are $1,000 is pretty good. Of course, they were better. I think the weighty digital speaker transport to some of the methods. I got to work my way up there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
now it's not even old. It's not even vintage, man. It's just you just picked it up secondhand at a great price, and you're loving it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. It's yeah, I mean that's the other thing is that like I like to try if possible to buy something that I think that I would be happy with potentially forever and not need to upgrade, and now I feel like my system is like that. I feel like I can just stop here and like I feel very very satisfied with the system. Whether it's the speaker chain, whether it's the headphone chain, I'm really happy, and I didn't even buy a new headphone. That's what's funny about it. I'm mainly enjoying my 650s, which is funny.
What's
Well,
even
something that
I'm sorry, I was just going to point out what's even funnier about this beginning topic of your new piece of gear there is that we're already on topic number 4 for the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we,
That's right.
we can talk forever on this subject.
I know. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, let's start off by introducing everybody. I mean, me and Nick have been doing kind of a pre-show, and then Micaiah and Ko have joined us. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
Good, good. And Micaiah, how are you doing?
well, how are all of you?
Good, good. So yeah, I mean, I think that before we get into the topics, I kind of want to just start right away with kind of thoughts on Can Jam, if that's okay with you guys. Do you want to? Is that okay if we start with that?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, that'll be great. Yeah. So Micaiah, oh no, and I'm sorry. Ko was there too. I forgot. So we have two people
Oh
that
yeah,
went to
let's
Can
let Joe
Jam.
go first. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Curious to
fantastic.
hear Co's
So
thoughts.
so what do you? So tell us what you guys think about your experiences there.
Oh, it was very nice. I was there for maybe 1.5 hours and then had to go. But it was quite busy. I should have arrived earlier. It was a fantastic event. It was a bit smaller than I thought, but quite frankly, the fact that the event even happened was surprising. Uh, I think in terms of gear, there were a few surprises. I think the Odyssey Carbon definitely surprised me. I didn't think you'd get sort of that texture out of a electrostat. That was very interesting. And
Nice.
the Meze Elite was really what I think Meze should have released like 2 or 3 years ago. Like that was it. I think the Elite is classic Odyssey, not Odyssey, sorry, classic Meze flagship sound. And the Empyrean is a
Nice.
no-go. Like I can't go back to the Empyrean. I just can't do
Wow.
it. Anything else? Oh yeah, so there was a interesting booth. I think it was Sound ID by SonarWorks. It's a very cool booth, and their technology is quite impressive. They had a pair of $20 Sony on-ear headphones that sounded like they were legitimately underwater. Like I couldn't. It was unbearable. And then after their EQ software, it sounded like something I would pay $150 for. It was
Wow.
very, very good. Yeah,
Wow.
surprisingly good. And the underdogs, I would say well, I wouldn't call Jerry Harvey an underdog, but I was very surprised at how good the Jolene was, and it's reasonably priced. And if you guys ever go to a Can Jam, I think that's the perfect time to buy it because when you buy a Jerry Harvey IAM, and I think they'll be doing this for the NYC Can Jam, they'll be giving you a 15% discount show special. In addition, they will give you free on the spot custom IM impressions. And you can use those impressions for any IM they sell. So,
Oh wow.
so I think because the Jolene is what $2,000, that brings it down to around 1750 ish, and then you can make it a custom for free. I mean that's I was
Nice.
very tempted. I was very tempted. And then the other thing I was tempted to get when I heard it was the Nautilus amp and sound.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal amplifier. I think he really got like I didn't know you could get soundstage, and that just that not holographic sound, but yeah, I guess a soundstage from tubes, from that few tubes. It's very impressive what he's done. And I really had to convince myself not to go for it. It's a phenomenal
Wow.
amplifier. If I didn't have the Watt 22, I would have probably just bought one on the spot. Yeah, it's very good. Um, Anything else that stood out to me? Uh, oh yeah, so I listened to the what's it called, Kenneton Wagner, and I liked it a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted to buy it, but I didn't know what I was listening to because I wasn't too familiar with the Kennerton lineup. So I asked the guy, I said, "How much is this? Can I buy it?" And he said, "Yeah, it's the Wagner. It's about $4,000." And I was like, "Hold up, hold up," because to me it sounded like a $1,500 dynamic driver. It sounded like a $1,500 dynamic driver, and instead it's a $3,800 planar.
Oh man.
And yeah, and it's a thing because when you do closeback, I honestly think dynamic drivers just there hasn't been a convincing closeback planar that can beat the value and sound that a dynamic can do. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they still have some ways to go with that before they can convince me to part with my money. And another example of a sort of a flawed closeback planar is the Stealth. I had no expectations going in, and it was still disappointing. There was no emotion, there was no feeling. It was just I could see why Amir liked it. When I listened to it and I thought, oh, so this is what Amir likes.
Do you
Okay.
do you know which amp was connected to the or which
Yes,
DAC and amp?
it was the DAC. I'm not too sure what it was, but the amp was quite good. It was the headphones.com Forge.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
It was a decent amp, and in fact, the headphones.com guys obviously they sell it, so they're gonna want to push it. But they had a whole table of amplifiers, ranging from stuff that was IFI like 300, $400 all the way to $4,000, $5,000 amps. And the guys told me that said the Stealth on the Forge is the best because he says you need tubes with the Stealth. And I could not even imagine what a solid state would sound like with the Stealth because the Stealth on tubes was bad enough. So yeah,
See,
really.
I disagree a bit. I disagree, but I'll wait. I'll wait.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Stealth is just not my game. But and then I listened to LCD5. That was phenomenal. I could definitely understand why people love that one. That's a phenomenal headphone.
Mm-hmm.
And I still prefer the Carbon, even though the
Mm.
5 has better bass and better slam and all of that. I think the Carbon's maybe because it's an E-stat, it just sounds a bit more. It sounds like it has a bit more resolution, a little bit more, a little bit more detail, a little more airy. But considering what you're getting with the LCD5 and the retail price, and you don't have to buy a specialized amp for the 5, you can just use almost anything, really. You could even use Diablo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the LCD5, I think that people are going to be buying a lot of 5s this year. And then, let's see. Yeah, I mean, that was about it. It was a great show. It was very busy. And, I look forward to seeing the pictures and impressions from NYC because looking at the exhibitor list, it's going to be a much bigger show.
So before we go to Makaya, I read about the Stealth and so there's somebody that listened to the. Actually, I think Connor posted this, but there's somebody that listened to them on the GSX Mini Mark II, and the impressions were similar to yours, but even worse actually. They really didn't like it at all. And then I think they heard it on the Nautilus. There was somebody that connected it to the Nautilus, and then they were utterly blown away by it and said it was like basically the best close back they'd ever heard, and it just did everything right. It had bass slam, it had imaging, it had. But what's interesting is that you heard it on the Forge, which I'm assuming is not a massive, huge step down from the Nautilus. So yeah, it is interesting that the impact of the chain on the headphone is quite obvious there.
Yeah, and also the stealth. Apparently, it just eats power. You just feed it more and more, and it's
Right.
apparently it scales very well. But no matter what I did and what I tried, it just couldn't. It just sounded like it just didn't sound right to me. It just didn't sound natural.
Right.
It didn't sound organic. It didn't sound. I couldn't connect with it. I
Too
really couldn't.
too clinical
Uh,
or too analytical.
so I think what you're describing is tonality. I didn't have an issue with the tonality. I had an issue with the presentation of just the whole sound. So it was fairly linear. It's a linear sound, and I love the HT800S. I have no issue with that sort of reference tuning. I have no issue with that. But what I had the issue with was it just didn't sound like anything else, and not in a good way. So I
Right.
can see it being polarizing, because when you listen to a headphone, right, you get that sort of impact. You get that thing.
Yeah.
LCD4 has that to the extreme. Any Odyssey headphone has that sort of slam, or I guess has that sense of impact. Stealth is a headphone that has no impact, in my opinion. It does extend phenomenally well to gear. Like, it just goes and goes and goes and goes, but it doesn't. I don't know how to explain it. It just doesn't have soul.
Move you.
Oh, I know. I have an answer, but we'll wait.
Mm-hmm.
Coach.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
sounded like it didn't move you emotionally at all.
It didn't. I tried. I listened to the most intense songs that I could pick, and I could pick any song they had, and it was on Koba, so I could pick anything, and it still didn't move me. I just kept turning up the amp. I just kept, come on, like, give me something, and not a single. It just didn't get me excited.
Right. Yeah. Micaiah, what are your thoughts?
So a couple of things. Time for new introduction.
Yeah.
So for a while now, I've been working with Headamp. So I've represented them at the show. Part of the reason that I picked them as a vendor is because I like the sound of their amplifiers. Now, there is no GSX Mini MK2. There's the GSX Mini and the GSX MK2. The difference is the MK2 is fully differential with a dedicated power supply, and that is the amplifier that I feel brings the Stealth to life. It was linear on the GSX Mini, but it didn't quite have the impact that I liked. So switching to the GSX MK2, it's the same 6 watts, but it's a fully differential design with a separate dedicated power supply. Versus
Right.
the GSX Mini, which is a single box solution, is still very powerful, but I don't think that it is the absolute best to bring the best out of Stealth.
Right.
So I listened to the Stealth on our GSX Mini setups, and it was okay. I felt like the Ether C sounded a bit more exciting, even the lower line stuff like the Aeon. But the Dan Clark room, we were running a Core TT2 with the GSX MK2, and for me, that was the setup with Stealth came to life. I like the kind of linear, that kind of studio neutral sound, but I like a lot of texture and a lot of impact and a lot of tactility in the bass, especially. And on tubes, I just felt like the Stealth was kind of lifeless. I didn't hear the Nautilus, so the Nautilus might be what brings it to life. But for our lineup, the MK2 is really where I felt that the Stealth finally had that linear presentation in terms of the frequency response, but had excitement, had impact, had dynamic contrast. So even for like myself, I'd like to pick up a Stealth, but I need to figure out, because I want something that's portable, but something that I can take with me, and I don't quite know how to go about that. How do I build a portable setup that is going to bring Stealth to the level that I know it can perform?
Is Stealth your favorite closeback?
One of them, but it's hard to just say that it's just that. I mean, my very favorite is I've got a modded Denon closeback.
Mm-hmm.
And as Ko was mentioning, if you tune those dynamic drivers correct, they can be absolutely exceptional. So I'm excited to see what the guys at, is it ETA, the guys that make the Genesis?
Yeah.
I think we had them on a few weeks
Yeah.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what they bring to market. But otherwise, I have an Ether C in my home that I run off my Vercosti M3H, and I feel like that is powerful enough and resolving enough to get me the texture that I'm looking for. And I felt like
Right.
Stealth on the GSX MK2 was definitely one of the better flagships. But again, on some of those less resolving setups, I can see where people had a lot of problems with it. What I'm particularly frustrated with is why Dan Clark was running it on a 2, because there were a ton of people that commented on how smooth it sounded and how almost smeared that it was, which I think is more so just the body and functionality of the tube amp and not so much the headphone.
Right.
But, again, Dan wasn't encouraging people to switch over to the MK2 setup to hear it on something that was, much more, I guess you say, linear in how it delivers the power. So I'm hoping that at Can Jam New York or even Capital Audio Fest, we can have an opportunity to have more people listen to that setup. Because like Susvara, it needs a lot of power, a lot. And it needs a really well-resolved power supply and really well-resolved system to really push it. And the Forge, I think the Forge it almost looks like one of the Mogwai design, the older amps that sound. So, to hear that it wasn't as amazing on there, I have a feeling that the Headphones.com guys are hitting a different price point than the Nautilus or even stuff like the MK2. Moving beyond that, I also thought that Carbon was fantastic. I thought it was probably one of the better electrostats that I've had a chance to hear, period. Again, I'm going to be a bit biased as I enjoyed it more so on the Blue Hawaii, and I wish that the AutoZ guys would have had one of our amps at the table. I like Millionaire tube amps because it's one of the better ones at 2000. I don't know if the solid state was the right choice for that show, just because I think a lot of people who heard it on the Blue Hawaii just kind of noticed that it was richer tonality, a little bit better timbre in terms of comparing it on the Z10E or the solid state Carbon from Millionaire Audio. Also, Elite. Oh man, Elite was so great. I had a chance to spend the night with Elite on the new Raw PDT 1A amplifier, and it was wonderful. And I was using the new eSaber RME88 as a DAC, which I think sounds a little bit better than the old AKM. But I'm excited for Elite Co, and I kind of agree. I really wished that would have been where Meze started, and then they would have reintroduced Empyrean at a lower price point with a different presentation to people who wanted that. Because I appreciate Empyrean, but it's not quite for me. Whereas I really love the Elite. It's one of those things where it's probably going to make its way into my collection, just because it's a bit richer than what I'm usually used to. But I think it has enough detail, cohesive enough, and large enough presentation for the soundstage that it's just nice. It's enjoyable. I feel like it's going to be a good complement to the HG800 that I have.
Awesome. Did you enjoy the Elite more than Susvara?
Yeah, I did. I've heard Susvara on really powerful chains, and for me, I have to push Susvara to too loud of a level before it starts to sound correct for me. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the equal loudness contours, but perception with frequency response is related to how loud things are. So you guys have seen some headphones, people say, hey, I love this at low volumes, it sounds amazing. For me, Susvara, and even my own LCD2 pre-phaser, I have to kind of push a little bit louder than I'm comfortable. So I can spend 4 or 5 hours with Elite at a lower volume level, and it sounds great. Whereas with Susvara, I really got to push it up to an average of 82 dBs, which isn't really healthy beyond 90 minutes.
And
you guys may feel differently.
And what about Elite's bass versus the OG MP bass?
OG MP bass wasn't for me. It was a bit too forward and a bit too rich. I felt like Elite. I mean, it surprised me track after track after track. I was not expecting. I'm smiling now. I'm not expecting the texture that it had. Not expecting the level of impact. I mean, just through and through, I was very satisfied. I will admit that new raw tube was where the magic was for me. I appreciated the Elite on solid state, but I felt like with a tube amp, it was really, really nice.
Nice.
I'm itching to get my hands on one. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Awesome. We're joined also by Lana and Zach. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Zach, are you there?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I'm here. All's good on my end. Looking forward to a chat. I got about an hour and a half maybe. Then I gotta run off. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've kind of got started. We started right away, right into CanJam, and we wanted to just kind of get those impressions and get the discussion started with that. So now let's go into our. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions for Ko or Micaiah about CanJam?
Did you guys hear Stealth?
I preferred Stealth, but I liked it on just the MK2 because I felt like that was the amp that was powerful enough and had the correct, really linear kind of focused presentation to bring out the best of it. I also wanted to add that Carbon is probably best of show for me. I liked it more than the LCD5. But I can see, some of the frustrations that you need a dedicated ESTAT system for Carbon, whereas LCD5 is a little more forgiving. But honestly, I'd rather have the Elite than the LCD5 because it's so much more efficient, and then I'd rather set those funds aside to get the system I need to run Carbon.
Is the LCD5 like? I really felt like the LCD4 was better than the LCD3, but it was pretty marginal. Like the improvement wasn't like night and days. Is the LCD5? Do you think a true successor to the LCD4? Do you feel like it's more of a slightly upgrade?
Like a diagonal, it's a little bit brighter. The presentation has a bit more presence. It's not quite as dark as the 4 was. So I appreciated that about it, but I don't know if people who like that kind of richer, non-fatiguing Odyssey sound are going to appreciate the 5 as much.
You know,
Have you had a chance to hear the LCD4? Because I have the 4Z, and I felt like, again, the 5 isn't enough of an improvement. But again, I can't say. I mean, I only heard it on a GSX Mini, and for LCD5, I would have liked to have heard it on an MK2 or even a tube amp to get a better feel for it.
you know what I find interesting actually? I feel that the LCD5 is to the LCD4 what the Empyrean Elite is to the Empyrean. I haven't heard either.
Good take.
Yeah, but it seems to me that a lot of the progressions in the model line are leaning more towards that neutral reference audiophile tuning. It makes me wonder if that's just the sound signature that people are preferring nowadays. In my case, for example, I love the original MP and I basically just wanted the original MP with more resolution. I don't know, some people say the Empyrean Elite has a similar bass to the original, but then I'll talk to other people that have owned both and they will say it doesn't even sound like the same headphone. I mean, I guess I can actually hear it myself soon, here in a few weeks. Um, but yeah, like it just makes me wonder if headphones, the ones that are at least becoming replacement top of the lines, I wonder if they are more leaning towards reference set like the Harman, the neutral, all of that.
Well, I can speak to Odyssey. Odyssey's most recent marketing push was very heavily targeted to musicians, and so they're trying to shift into studio neutral. I don't want to give a final take on Elite versus LCD5 because I haven't heard them on the same system. So, to one extent, I think the LCD5 being low impedance and low sensitivity is going to have some advantages in a studio setting versus the much more efficient Elite. But it's hard to say without hearing both. But definitely Odyssey is targeting pro audio guys and sound engineers. The whole Carbon campaign featured a lot of impressions from people who are in industries and on the pro audio side of things. So that's probably why they're pushing in that direction.
No, it's interesting to see them change. Like, I mean, originally they were a flavor can. The LCD 2 and 3 were warm and a bit romantic and bloomy, and it was like a late night headphone for me, like listening to that sort of thing. And then I heard the 4, and the 4 was getting closer to neutral. It had, I guess, less weight where it used to have sort of an emphasized weight. I'd say it was getting closer to neutral. So interesting to hear that the 5 is even more in that direction.
Well, the X was their push into studio, and then they did the MX4, which was a high efficient push into studio. But I think to your point, the 4 is probably one of the last oddities where I felt they still had that kind of laid back, heavier than actually natural sound. Because I still have a 2 pre-phaser, and I love it for that quality. And with the 5, yeah, they're kind of departing from that, and they want to go in a different direction.
This may be why I enjoy my Abyss TC so much, because I think that it walks a fine line between being a flavor can and being studio. You know what I mean?
You've got TC on tubes, though. That's a very specific and wonderful experience, I think.
Well, hearing it on tubes definitely tilts it more towards flavor can. It definitely gives it body and thickness. But then I have the solid state as well, and that definitely tips it towards being more neutral. I mean, of course, it still has a definitely, yeah, that's a good argument that having tubes and solid state can in fact be uh kind of like a flavor can without having a flavor can. If you do your tubes a certain way, then basically anything can be a flavor can if you try hard enough.
Lana, what solid state are you enjoying right now with your TC?
Oh, I am enjoying the Bracasti M3H, which I adore. Initially, I wasn't sure if I wanted to pay 500 extra for a headphone portion, but I'm really glad I did because I like it more than my previous amp, and it has enough power. I don't think it would have enough power for Sysfara because I haven't tried Sysfara on it, but Abyss definitely still has about 20% headroom on it, and
Yeah.
it doesn't even just seem loud enough, the difference between getting loud enough and being properly driven. It sounds properly driven. So, and I've heard Abyss when it's not properly driven. And yeah, it drives it perfectly fine. It sounds really, really good. I prefer tubes, but I wouldn't be upset if I had to use solid state.
I have one question for Ko. Did you hear Abyss TC at the show?
I did, and I hated it.
Can you, just like like, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so really it comes down to the comfort, the comfort, the comfort, and the comfort, and also the comfort. So, so I put on my head, and this is at the Wells Audio booth, so we got some top level gear there. I put on my head, and I instantly thought it wasn't adjusted correctly, and then I realized that, oh, this doesn't really need too much adjustment because they don't have head sliders or any of that. So I sort of moved the ear pads a little bit, but to be honest, it still didn't. I just felt like my ears were being punished by the pads. They were just way too small. And then when I moved my head around,
his TC was broken. The first day of the show, his headband assembly snapped. So he had it kind of rigged together. Yeah. But it is not comfortable. Comfort is not a highlight at all. And then even in a perfect setting, it's still going to be uncomfortable a little bit.
I find it comfortable, but I have a very narrow head. So for me, the pads actually kind of float. They barely even touch me on the lowest setting.
So and then and then I turned my head and I did a little bit of usability testing, and it sort of bobs around on your head because it doesn't clamp. It doesn't clamp on your head, which to me is a downside. Some people don't like clamping, which fair enough. So then I tried some music on it, and every time, when you're at CanJam, you're sitting in a seat and you're sort of peering into the iPad or whatever it is they have set up there. And when you sort of have that crouch position, the Abyss doesn't the Abyss doesn't really work for that position. So you have to sort of hold it with one hand as you look down at the computer, and it's just really odd. So I played a few tracks, and I understood the sound signature, To me, it sounded the closest thing to in-ear, or his, I should say, to speakers. Is It's the closest thing I heard to speakers from a headphone. The spaciousness and the subwoofer bass, it's truly incredible. I can see the appeal there. I think it's definitely a more exciting sound than Susvar. It definitely gets me more excited than Susvar. But I don't think it, because I just kept listening to different things, and to me it sort of had that LCD4 like characteristic of it was showing off a lot. Like it was showing off that it is indeed the best thing in the world, and it was pushing 100% on all cylinders. Um, and then when it came to the upper end frequencies, I don't know. I just found I just didn't find it was natural. It just sounded like it was showing off a lot. Um,
Have a chance to hear
and
anything else on that amplifier?
sorry.
The Wells Audio, I don't know, their stage 3 tube. Did you hear anything else on it?
No, it was taken. The other
Ah,
seat is that they had two seats at the booth, and
yeah.
everyone else is, yeah, and there was quite a few people waiting. So I sort of had to be choosy. I had to be pretty quick. So I listened to when I do my demos at Can Jam, I listen to 5 minutes because there's one song I listen to. It's "Lose Yourself to Dance." I know that song inside and out. And so when I listen to it on a pair of headphones, I can determine very quickly whether I like it or not. And then if I do like it, I can go forward. And with the Abyss, it was just, to me, it was like speakers on my head. And I thought, why would I get this if I already have speakers? But I mean, I do get it. It's really cool. It's really phenomenal. But I just did not like the form factor. But the sound, I definitely understood, and I do respect it. I do respect the sound a lot. But the form factor, Jesus, no, 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 no way.
Unfortunately, with the Abyss, it's a bit of par for the course. The only way they're able to achieve that bass that pretty much no one else can is because the headband structure allows them to create that air gap that and the position of the driver that far off the ears to sort of be able to generate that sort of, I guess, sensation of that kind of SPL in the bass.
Indeed, yeah. There was nothing else, nothing even coming close to it at the show. And I listened to quite a few things. Like nothing could even come close to it. So it definitely it did its job in in defending itself as unique and top of the line in that particular segment. It did its job very well.
Going back to what we were saying about audies and stuff, targeting, like, I guess someone was saying the pro audio market. I just don't know, like, what do we mean by that? Because, I mean, like, if you go into a mixing room or a mastering or whatever, like, these guys are using Bayer Dynamics, but not even, like, high-end Bayer Dynamics, or they're using, like, very entry-level Sennheisers, and the amplifier that they're using for their headphone is probably just something from, like, their audio interface, from their monitor. Their monitor controller will have a headphone out or something like that. So I don't see these guys dropping 5K on an like an LCD 5 because most of them will have really good active monitors or something in their studios. You like and even if the guys don't have their own little studio with speakers and they want to do more mixing and stuff at home, I don't see them dropping 10K on, a really, really, really high-end headphone system, including, ridiculously priced, in my opinion, LCD 5s.
I don't think that perhaps the Pro Audio is going to. You're right. I don't see Pro Audio dropping that much money on like an LCD 5 or something like that. But I think it's more that consumer hi-fi is emulating Pro Audio for the
Yeah.
enthusiasts because I just keep running into a lot of people that want the cleanest, the most neutral, the most resolution. They want to hear, dissect their recording, the flaws, the good and bad. That's what pro audio people do. We, as music enjoyers, don't really need to. I think for a lot of people, it's appealing. It's the same reason that a lot of people don't believe in tube amps because they just want the most raw, unadulterated presentation of something, flaws and all. But I feel like that's something people either love
Mm.
or they explore for a bit and then they realize that it loses its appeal very fast when you spend a ton of money on a system and you realize that 50% of your music, if not more, just is unlistenable on it. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's either a phase that people go through or it's something that some people genuinely love. Like they maybe love to really filter their music library to only things that will sound good on the most revealing, the most detailed, the most pro audio like components. Um,
So to add to that, I think what's interesting, Lana, is if you've have you gone to a speaker show?
I haven't gone to a speaker show. The only thing I've done is gone to showrooms.
Okay, so
I've been to a few.
okay, yeah. So if you go to a speaker show, you'll notice that a lot of the high-end speaker companies, they tend to play a single instrument recording. And I've asked them, I said, why do you do this? And they say because it is the best way to showcase technicalities and dynamic performance from your speaker or from your system. And if you start doing,
Nice.
if you're doing like, and if you do composite, if you do like
Yeah,
really
nobody
busy,
listens to one instrument.
nobody does. But they say, to really stand ourselves apart from everyone else in the show, we have to showcase what our box can do. And if we start playing, the Hotel California and everything, everyone's gonna no one can really appreciate if they sit and it's too much. Like they say, what we found is no one can appreciate these complex passages when they go from room to room to room to room. But if we do these individual instrument recordings, they say that our customers or people understand or can appreciate what we do technically that's different from everyone else.
Couple
I
cool
really get
things.
frustrated when they do that at shows because it's everything sounds good if you play a really romantic, beautiful cello piece on a semi decent transducer, it will sound pretty great on a lot of systems. It's very hard for me personally to actually detect flaws in something like cohesion from a single instrument because you're not getting like a really dynamic track, right? So I love to I remember hearing, what's that big horn company, starts with A, it's really famous, everyone talks about like massive horns that take up like a whole room.
Avant-garde.
Avant-garde, right? So you go listen to Avant-garde, and they'll have these like $200,000-$300,000 systems, like insane systems powering these extremely efficient horns, and they always play like some weird tribal single drum sort of track type thing. I asked them to play Rage Against the Machine, and they were not happy to do that. But then they obliged and did it for me, and the whole system just fell to pieces. There was just zero cohesion in it at all. So I hate when they do that at shows. So I take my own tracks now, and I'll if I'm interested in a speaker, I'll make them play something that's really dynamically rich with a lot of instruments and a lot going on, because you can hear pretty quickly if the drivers aren't like married up beautifully, and if there's no cohesion specifically is something that I think a lot of the high end speakers lack. So I don't know, and I think they play these single instrument tracks to hide a lot of their problems, because and then as soon as you get them in your own system and start playing a bit of everything, I think they fall apart. So I always hated that when you go to these shows and they play these just Yo-Yo Ma in every room, and then they're like, oh, don't want to play Hotel California. Oh, that's overdone. And I'm like, yeah, it's actually a great track though for assessing a speaker, because it's got some amazing mid-range detail that a lot of things can't render, and if you know the track well enough, you can be like, oh yeah, this is good, this is bad, move on.
So what I'm
Even if
getting
you
from this,
get the track.
is that Hotel California will transcend generations.
It already has, hasn't
As a
it?
kid, yeah. I grew up listening to Hotel California on my mom's crappy CD player in a car. I didn't even know what it was. I got into hi-fi and it's everywhere. I'm like, oh, I've been listening to this for 10 years already.
It's my mom's
But
favorite song of all time.
right?
So guess how many times
Exactly.
I had to listen to it my whole life.
Yeah. But exec, with Odyssey and the studio thing, I don't fully understand it, but all of their internal marketing is at Pro Audio. If you go on the website for like Carbon and LCD5, 5 or 6 of the impressions they post are coming out of studios. So I don't know how
No,
much penetration they're having,
I've seen this. It doesn't make a lot of sense
Yeah,
to me because I know pro audio guys and they don't give a shit about expensive headphones. It's the
They
last thing
don't.
they care about.
They don't give a shit.
now what I will mention is, as far as speakers go, I have a story if you guys will entertain it. This is from Axpona a few years back.
Hmm?
One of the big reasons that I have the reference, amp DAC that I've got is I spent 2 or 3 years looking for
All right,
just components
what
that
is
sounded good.
what is that? What is that? Reference amp DAC for us who don't know.
My Procosti story. Have you guys heard the Procosti story yet?
No,
I'm sure I have.
I know Lana has. Long
I
story short,
haven't.
I went to Axpona. I went through 15 floors of stuff. I walk into the Procosti room. It's treated first and foremost. The first track that they play for me is Daft Punk, Random Access Memories. What's the song that everybody loves? Give me a moment. What is it? Nova CeeLo. Get Lucky. They play Get Lucky for me. They've got some crazy DSC recording, and they crank it to like maybe 82 dBps. And when the bass just hit, it kicked me in the chest, and I like lost my breath for a second. From a whole solid state system in like our semi-treated room, and they just went through all of this music that was stuff that I knew, and I was just fucking floored. Forget my language. After hearing exactly what you said, Co, song after song after song after single instrument, they're like, "Nah, we got something for you," and they just drop it. And I've consoled since. But you're right. I mean, I've done a couple of shows. I've had a chance to speak with more manufacturers, and a lot of times they do that. They custom pick music that showcases their advantage. And when you pick something that is outside of that selection, exactly as you said, executor, it starts to reveal, not everything that they want, which is crappy.
Mm.
Oh, it's the show. Why would they want to highlight what doesn't work on their speakers? So they're never going to bring a song that's not going to have their speakers shine to its best sound. They'll never do that. That's why so many manufacturers, and especially at the shows, don't want any outside music at all because, like it was mentioned earlier, the speaker just crashed because it doesn't play that kind of music well. So, so, and obviously they're trying to sound better than the next booth over, but the problem is they're only trying to sell to people. They're trying to sell dollars versus the sound of music. If you can't bring your own music because this is what I listen to, this is what I want to hear. If your speaker can't play it, I'm moving down the hall. Bottom
As
line,
you should. As you
yes.
should.
And if they won't allow it, then you're not giving the customer the opportunity to have a fair decision whether to buy your speaker or not. You've shut them off because you don't want them to hear the music that they listen to. So at that
Preach.
point, I'm not a buyer at all. I'm not a fan of any company that'll do that because, hey, you're not giving me the opportunity to enjoy anything because it's your way, highway. Well, I'm picking the highway because you're not letting me try mine. So as far as shows go on that, if they're not open to let you hear your own tracks, not interested. And I know a lot of people. Why would you want to venture any money if you can't hear the kind of music you listen to? And even inside some genres of music, it might play woodwinds and this and that, okay, but when it gets to a couple other instruments that are part of that genre, they fall flat and they don't want to play music that highlights those instruments. uh, Give me the broadband or I'm just going to go find another speaker. Now mind you, no speaker is going to play everything, every genre. You just have to settle on what's most important to you.
Final thing I will mention, having worked shows and attended, I try when I'm present at our table or my own to have a way for people to interact with our system. I wanted to have a CD player at CanJam because I think the CD transport was transparent enough, but it didn't fall through. But we did have Cobas for streaming. So I appreciate a vendor that will let us play either CDs or tracks through streaming. I've had some people give me pushback at dropping different components, like my own DAC or a different digital source, and I can understand why. It took me an
Yeah.
hour to get some of the Android devices that I was using at CanJam set up, just because they
Right.
have to be configured specifically.
I heard there was.
Even then, if go ahead.
Oh yeah, I heard there was quite a few problems at the Heifman booth, and though even though their equipment was pretty terrible, even though some folks had some even better equipment they wanted to put in there instead, the rep was fairly insistent that take your shit elsewhere.
I mean, a couple of times, I think at one point, one of our digital sources went down. We had an Wi-Fi DAC, and it's so easy for people just to plug right into that Wi-Fi DAC and run. Now, the MyTech DAC that we were using on the big system was not as easy. So once I had it set up, I did ask people, hey, let's use Qobuz or Tidal to kind of find a song that you want. I don't want to introduce different digital components because it's going to put us down for 20, 30 minutes to get it configured.
Oh, I got a question as a manufacturer for you.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to share a demo playlist on Qobuz?
We would. It's something that we'd have to put together, but I think both of us. Justin is, of course, somebody to speak for himself, but some of the conversations I've had, there's music that he definitely enjoys in his system, and Qobuz asked that of us, so I hope that's something that we can do. And I want it to be not so much as a this is what sounds good on our system, but more of a this is the music that we enjoy, because I feel like our brand is transparent enough to be able to showcase music in general, So hopefully that's something that we'll do in the future. Yeah.
Absolutely, and to be honest, it's sometimes it can be challenging to find just good quality recordings. And when you find a good recording, like with the existing gear you have, it makes you appreciate it even more.
Oh yeah, I had to hunt. There's the copy of Hotel California I have is a pull off of like a Simply. I'll share it in the Discord chat.
The
Pull off
vinyl
of
one.
Simply vinyl. Yeah, the
Oh.
180 gram.
Yeah, you shared this with me. It is very special.
Yes.
It took so long to find that. I keep it. I have like copies everywhere, so if I lose it, I always have another one. But yeah, it took
I'm
forever
very
to find that
interested.
pull.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll post the whole album up.
Yeah, I think we have a question from Juan. Do we take questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. I'm not sure. How do you get him to invite to speak?
I think he wants to speak type thing. Is what
Well,
he tells me.
I think I gave him the invite to speak. Yep, there he is.
Yep.
Juan, you have a question?
I'm getting nothing from him.
Yeah, I can't hear you on. You gotta adjust your mic.
You gotta unfold your MQA a bit more.
Okay. While he's adjusting, I'd like to commend. I forget who it was that said they'd open Tidal or Qobuz to be able to select music from. I think that's plenty to allow in something in the CanJam atmosphere. Bringing your own gear, that's like you said, that's way too much. But to allow any type of music off of those two servers, that's very commendable.
It was hilarious to go in the lobby and just go to the bathroom and then walk out and see people with LCD4s around their neck. I was like, this is hilarious.
A little bit. Yeah, hopefully at Capital Audio Fest, we can have the CD transport, because I know a lot of guys have discs that they like and they've loved, as well as all the streaming options. While we have him, Code, did you get a chance to hear Juan's headphone? I think it's the Arabist Everest.
I did not. And then when I saw pictures of Juan, I definitely must have bumped into him at some point. I must have just passed right by him, but no, I didn't.
It's good. I had a chance to hear it, and then I did some photography for him the next morning. It's really good. I'm really excited to just see what people think about it when it comes to the market.
So speaking of independent manufacturers, I just ordered the Phil phone last night, so that should be coming in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Nice. Did you also pick up your Juan phone? I'm sorry, your Arabist Everest?
No, I haven't. But I'm interested. I'm keeping my eye on that one too. But I've promised myself try to limit myself in headphones. But I'll end up becoming PC chip within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, jeez. nobody should do that.
By the way, Chip is still selling, I think, around 15 headphones in the Discord for sale. So check them out.
Wonderful pricing too. Hear him. We hear him.
Yeah. I'm here.
Welcome.
Oh, Mark, you just muted yourself. Yeah, I'm here now. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that thing with manufacturers keep forcing people to play like a playlist of like 5 songs that no one knows. That was just, yeah, that was probably the most annoying thing at Camp
Oh,
Jam.
Odyssey at their booth. I forgot. What did they have,
See,
like 10 songs?
yeah, they had like there's like only okay. There was like one song from like one group that I knew, and like it was from their most famous album. But like they only had one song from that album that I've never heard before. That's how I tested the Carbon.
I know. No. Did you come to the headamp table after? Because I hooked it up to.
That's why, yeah. That's why I tried the LCD5, but I didn't have time. I didn't have time to try the Carbon. I just plugged the LCD5 into my Zendeck.
Oh yeah,
It's pretty good,
we got Sanko to send it our way for like 20 minutes at the end of the day, and I was like, "All right, guys, set up a line, gather around, take turns. If you want a song, cue it up."
Yeah, because they had to put away their
Ridiculous.
amps, but yeah, I remember. Like,
I mean,
I remember the first day Sankara were like Odyssey booth. They were staying late because people were still lining up for LCD5 demos.
I don't get it because
nuts.
Carbon sounds good with a lot of music. I mean, I went through a bunch of crazy stuff. I did heavy metal. I did some like some folk, some Americana. Didn't sound bad with any of.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, you know, it's a few $1,000. It better be pretty well rounded, but yeah, it's nice.
I gotta ask. So I know this is supposed to be like a positive podcast, but I'm really curious. Worst in show.
Where's the raw over here easily?
Okay.
Easily.
Crawl, you mean? Crawl.
The crawl.
Yeah.
It sounded like you know, I don't. Apparently, so what they did was they had these like the pads that they were using were basically just open cell sponges essentially. They didn't really seal much. Apparently, it was like a super last minute thing, like for I guess they didn't vet the baffle or something. So every time they put like even a semi sealed pad on it, it would just get gigabase. So they just switched it for like the lightest thing they can put together, and the result was really peaky and like bad extension.
Well, let's call it instead the headphone most likely to improve.
Most likely to improve. Yeah, seriously, no.
Participation award.
Look, I was really negative about it at the show, but I saw what the guys at Raw said. They were like, yeah, we know it has issues, and I think they're gonna rework the whole thing, which is pretty cool.
But they showed up and participated, so that's a step.
Indeed,
of course. But yeah, I'm glad they're looking at the feedback, and
I think worst in show
could work
for
out
me,
pretty well.
I think worst in show for me was the campfire honeydew. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Who brought campfire?
Oh, it was Bloom Audio.
Oh,
yeah, they had the entire line there, and I tried everything, and I tried Andromeda for the first time, which I loved.
Yeah,
I loved it, but what I hate about it is that you need foam tips, and I hate foam tips. But with foam tips, Jesus, it's amazing, amazing set. But then then you have the Satsuma and the honeydew, and it's just what the fuck? Like, come on.
Yeah, so I think what they were trying to do there was make a cheaper version of. Well, they made something that I think no one asked for, which is a cheaper like IO or something like that. Which I don't know anyone who liked that. So, yeah. Strange decisions.
Yeah, I mean, that was hilarious. And then the Vega, that was an interesting set. I think that was that's pretty solid. Really great low end, and just I think what else? Oh, what was funny was I did not expect this. He had the entire line of Elitech cables, and what was really interesting was all the older people at the show. So yeah, a lot of the older people at the show was gravitating toward the high end, like the Elitech cables, which I thought was pretty interesting.
They were just sobbing cables around.
What do you guys reckon was the the best newcomer? Like someone who hasn't really been in audio, whether it's a streamer or a DAC or an amp or something. Was there someone that you saw maybe you only saw them for the first time? I heard the Y stack, the We stack. It's something that hasn't really been talked about a lot, but was there anyone that you felt sort of has just landed on the field and you've been like, oh wow, these guys they're going to be around for a while?
Yeah, Sound ID by
Our
far.
bus.
Oh, okay, yeah. Our bus, yeah, of course.
Oh. Yeah. I thought
Yeah, I would-
Dunu made
yeah.
a good showing.
Oh yeah, Dune is fabulous, but I think they've been around for
Well,
a
no,
while.
yeah. So here's the thing with Duna: they've been around for like 20 years, but there was a big gap between like 2012 and like maybe a year ago where they were just not present in North America whatsoever, and their line was kind of samey for a while. But now they're just redoing everything. They're just kind of throwing stuff out and seeing what works. It's pretty nice. Their new mid-range models are actually really nice now. So,
what about streaming specifically? Because that's something I've been looking at a little bit, looking for something that can stream, work as a Rune endpoint.
IFI Zen Stream. That is a good one.
Zen stream.
Just do what I do and plug
Yeah.
Zen back into a phone.
Oh, there you go.
Now, I'm going to
you know what?
Zen stream soon because I've liked it as well.
Yeah, and also the other little gadget or gizmo which I liked was the IFI Go Blue.
I want one of those.
Mm.
Yeah, I spent like 20 minutes with it. It was nice. Hooked right up to my phone and walked around.
With the Zen stream, I'm kind of looking for something more that has like more higher end with internal clocking and has like AES output and like onboard hard drive so you can store everything and then access it through Rune through your whole house. I'm thinking more of like a proper Rune high end streamer, like in the space where Antipodes and Oralic and stuff are sort of playing in.
Well, you've got Lumen. So Lumen has the X1 series, which is discrete model blocks, power supplies into the built-in DACs, but they don't have hard drives built in, so you'd probably have to build the Lune core for that.
That thing's what, 14 grand? Jesus.
For the high, but that's the highest end model. I mean, you can get like the lower end. Like I have the cheapest one. Like I have the U1 Mini, and then I use an external DAC with it because I find that's a good value sweet spot.
Okay.
I mean, Zach, I'm gonna be honest. Dan Clark hand built, I think, some Raspberry Pi solutions that they run with a local network for LAN. They have hard drives that they have somewhere, and then everything is BNC out. And for a
like the Pi 2 AES thing?
I don't know. I don't know what model of it is. I don't know if they're using specifically the Pi 2 AES hardware or if they have a more specific front end that they're doing the software encoding with. That's the route that they went for their shows. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably is the Pi 2. It's probably the Pi 2 AES because that's been hugely popular on like everywhere lately as like a really cheap way to get yourself into a Rune endpoint and a streamer.
I mean, it worked well. It sounded good, and for them to run it at a show, it must be at that level where it's more than acceptable.
It's holding up. Yeah, and especially because it's not something where they're getting a dealer like. They're not selling something, you're not making money playing the Pi 2 AES. You could put a Lumen in there and then partner with Lumen, but if you're running the Pi 2 AES, you're not doing that because you want to make money out of that streamer. You're doing it because you think it's good.
Yep, that's a custom solution that they went with.
Interesting.
Right, that's what I thought. Now, I have no idea what software they're running. I have no idea how it's set up, but it worked well for them, and they've got, I think, 4 or 5. Two of these just dedicated combination power supply and streaming like bricks that they've built. Super optimized, and they work really well. There might be pictures online, maybe, I don't know.
No, it'd be cool if they start selling something like that built on because usually if you're using the Pi as your hardware, it's not overly expensive since most of the computing power is very cheap.
Yep. That may be something to reach out. I feel like if there's enough interest, they may bring it to market. It's hard to say, but.
Oh wait, hold on, Zach. Has Parker converted you to vinyl yet?
No, not yet. He's gonna keep trying, probably forever. Yeah. I'll probably do it next year. Because I kind of have a phono stage now, like a pretty good one, and yeah, I think I probably will have a little dabble next year. But it's just a rabbit hole. Just a rabbit hole I'm scared of. Yeah.
If you do, please tag me because I'm very curious in how that turns out.
It's a beautiful
I didn't know. sec. I didn't realize that you were also in the CDT rabbit hole because holy fuck pulled me in, and I had a little bit of experience, and then I went and bought something, and I was like, damn, this is good.
Oh
Fuck.
yeah.
CDTs have some of the coolest DACs as well.
Oh yeah, some of the old CD players, like the built-in DACs on them were, and they're so overly engineered from the early '90s and stuff. Like you pick these things up and they're like 30 kilograms, and they've got like 4 transformers for like every stage. They're just like stupidly overbuilt. And even now, like people just don't build stuff like that. Like everything's kind of light. It's just not over-engineered the way they used to do things in the '90s. But I don't know. I like CD transports. I think even if I bought a really high-end streamer, I'd still keep my 1991 Sonic Frontiers transport with like a modded clock on it as like one of my references because I just used it for so many years and love it so much.
Oh, dude, I've got both. I've got the high-end streamer, and what I found is, if it's only available in 16, it's only available in Redbook, I need to go dig up the CD because 9 times out of 10, that Redbook, and I just have a basic Lim Genki. I don't even have a nice thing. I've got a few more steps to go, but even at that entry level for CDT, it sounds better than most of the streaming options that are at the same bit rate.
Oh, mate, if you want to do yourself some damage, go listen to the Esoteric VRDS Neo transports. Probably one of the best digital front ends you can buy that I've ever heard is still the Esoteric transports. Yeah, it's just the VMK20 is the one you want to look for. That transport is so ridiculously over-engineered. It's the same one that goes into the DCS Vivaldi stack. They use the same transport mechanism in that 5-unit $100,000 stack. But just the CD transport from that is a ridiculous piece of equipment that I will one day have to own. But yeah, it's just bit of a low priority, dropping 5 figures on a transport.
Yeah, well, draw me a link because I know somebody mentioned the Wadia CD players, which are like 4,000 or 5,000 are, a nice step up from some of the basic.
Yeah. The older Wadias are fantastic, and you don't have to buy the new ones. You want to buy the older ones, and again, they're completely over-engineered, ridiculously over-engineered. To be honest, Lampezator of all people actually did probably the best CD transport breakdown that you will find. They go through Wadias, they go through the Forcel airlift where they've got the CD spins on a little cloud of air. Like someone engineered that for audio insanely, like basically like this floating CD mechanism. I owned one of their DACs and there's very interesting engineering behind it. But Lampezator, shout out to them for doing a really good breakdown of transports. Don't love their gear very much, but yeah, he's actually a very knowledgeable guy and writes really, really well. So I'll link that in the podcast thing now.
Thank you. I'm curious to...
All right. Well, we've spent most of the show, I think, focusing on the impressions, and that I think seems totally warranted because there's a lot of new things to kind of discuss. I think that maybe what we can do is maybe hit on a few of these topics. We won't do all of them today just because of time. Why don't we start with discussing this whole concept of head stage, and specifically since we have been talking about headphones a lot, is it worth being concerned about headphone stage? So when people discuss this, they compare. Often there's a comparison made to speakers, and speaker stage is obviously much bigger and very different. And on one side of the argument, there's someone arguing that, well, I don't even worry about sound stage on a headphone because it's a headphone. Who cares? And on the other side of that argument, you have somebody saying, well, that does matter to me, even though it's not like a speaker. It's much, much more in your head. There are big differences that I do appreciate. So what do you guys think about the importance of head stage and sound stage in headphones?
I guess I should start this.
Yep.
So typically I would say that, staging in headphones isn't really something I consider super important. I mean, when I try like something like, I don't know, HD 800, K701, things like that, the soundstage effect, like you can feel that with the imaging. You can kind of feel a sense of space with these types of headphones, but no, I don't think it's something that's worth paying too much attention to over other factors that would make a headphone great and other factors that would help with the presentation of a headphone. And also, everyone has like a different HRTF curve, so different basically compensation for how they hear spatial effects. And so, you can say one headphone sounds really wide for one person, but someone else it may not be that same type of presentation. However, I will say that there are some headphones that can feel almost too claustrophobic when you're coming from something a little bit wider. In that case, that might be a little bit of a problem. But yeah, in general, I think it's not something to put too much priority into.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. I think some headphones are probably a little bit diffuse, like the HT800, which I enjoy. It's a little bit like overblown,
Right.
and then other stuff like the HT650 can sometimes feel a bit narrow and not as spacious.
Right.
But in the end, it's a headphone. Your staging is extremely limited.
Yeah.
In the terms of what it can be in a speaker system. So, I don't know. I don't really worry about it too much. It's not something that's like in my priority checklist. I'm kind of like the micro detail, transients, dynamics, slam, then like weight, and then like somewhere down around weight and body and timbre. Then under that, probably staging. Like.
It all comes together to kind of form the presentation, but yeah, it's kind of also one thing is that right now there's a ton of research being done into basically DSP for a spatial audio. And there's a lot of it's the field is moving really quickly in that regard, and there's a lot of
because
big
of
companies,
VR.
partly because of VR and partly just because of other practical applications. But essentially, the industry is moving quite a lot forward with it. I was talking to Sankar about that. And, according
So
to him,
this is like where they have like a camera that films you, that looks the way you're looking, and then adjusts the sound to give you more directional sort of experience. So like it makes you feel like, is that what you're talking about with the HRTF tracking type stuff?
well, I mean, I haven't seen that as an implementation, but I mean literally just simulating how you would hear sound in a natural environment rather than in a headphone. So, like right now, in a lot of cases it's a little bit primitive, but like you can see something like video games where you can get positional accuracy in essentially any headphone now, but getting that granular to the point where you can simulate that for each individual person in a way that you can literally get a sense of where anything and everything is in space without the limitations of just analog left right panning.
Okay.
But that's a field of research right now that can probably affect how you experience music quite a bit if it gets far enough. And who knows, it could be a pretty big part of how we experience sound in the near future, rather than simply analog staging.
Yeah, I'll just say that I agree with Abzek. It's not. I wouldn't say it's the most important thing for me, but I think I do notice it, and it does have an impact on my enjoyment when I'm listening to headphones, even though I vastly prefer speakers and speaker stage. And the thing that I always think about is when my friend let me borrow his Susvara and TC, and I kind of went back and forth and compared them, and it just annoyed me every time I went back to the Susvara how much more open and big the TC sounded. And I said, well, how come the Susvara sounds so closed in? And it did annoy me. So I think there is something to be said for the space and staging and even in headphones. And I think that it's something that can definitely be noticed and appreciated. But I agree, there's other things that are much more important in headphones.
See, I kind of disagree with all of you. I feel as though speaker stage and headphone stage should never be compared because they are too different. They can be seen as two entities that are parallel to one another in my mind. So I think that if you were to look at speaker stage, like if you were to put it on a scale from 1 to 10, there are going to be speakers that perform at a 1 as far as stage goes, and then there are speakers that will perform at a 10. And just like that with headphones, you're gonna get some headphones that are very narrow, specifically some really narrow staged closed backs. And then if so, like for reference, I'll just put that as a 1 on the scale, and then on the end of the spectrum as a 10, you could get something like an Abyss TC, a RAL SR1A, whichever, like one of the most open, spacious headphones that there are. And even though one might necessarily compare it to speakers, I think you can compare it to other things that would fall somewhere on that spectrum. So for headphones, it would be other headphones, for example. And I think that if you were to take just the worst staging headphone and compare it to the best staging headphone, you would definitely see that if you value stage in any capacity, it might not be like the top of your list, but if it's the second or third or even fourth important thing to you, you might find yourself reaching more for like the best sound staging one versus the worst. And so, in that regard, I think it's kind of. I don't see why some people say that stage doesn't matter in a headphone because it might not be speakers, and that's because they are not speakers. But I think that if you are listening to an overly claustrophobic, closed in sounding headphone, you might find that you just get annoyed really fast. And I see a lot of newcomers, especially, join the hobby and they inquire about soundstage and they ask what has good soundstage, and a lot of times the default answer is don't even bother about headphone stage, just go straight to speakers. And I find, not everyone can go straight to speakers, and there's definitely a spectrum there. Like I said, if you look at it, there's some of the worst headphones for soundstage and there's some of the best. So while head stage is limited in regards to being like a speaker, you can definitely get the most you can out of it versus getting the least amount that you can out of head stage, if that makes sense. And that's all I'll say.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. Even with Jack and Co, as I've heard more speakers, I've learned there are differences between headphone stage and actually sound stage on a speaker system. And I've kind of gravitated away from soundstage and kind of tried to talk about headphones more so and how cohesive are they with the sound they present, how precise are they, how not so much spacious, but is there room? Because some headphones sound crowded, and I don't enjoy that sound where it sounds
Yeah,
like things are competing.
yeah, like
Even with some, yeah,
ideally, it would be great to find one that has good stage and correlation, I should add, to its dynamics and timbre and all that. It's just a piece of the equation. Like, there's some but I feel that if a headphone, for example, did stage extremely poorly but did everything else well, it might still be a deal breaker. For example, that's why I sold my Stellia. I loved my Stellia, you all know. Like, I loved my Stellia, but as I lived with it longer and longer, I realized that it just sounded very narrow and closed in, and it it eventually just started to bug me. But
What
carry
about the
on.
HD 650?
The HD 650,
which 650? Because I guess we get to have that discussion real quick.
No, let's say 650, 6XX, just anything in that space with obviously a rather narrow stage, decent imaging though, but like pretty much everything else is quite good on it. But it's often recommended to beginners. But everyone's major complaint probably with it is that the stage is quite narrow. It
Well, I
can
like
it can be
580.
it can be improved with gear though.
Well, yeah, I was
Oh,
about to say the first time that I experienced the 650 sounding more spacious, don't laugh at me, but when I first got it, I had a Shift Modi 3 and uh, Modi 3 and Magni 3 stack. And it made the 650s and my 600s that I had at the time sound particularly closed in. It's like the dynamics weren't opening up as much as I would have liked. And the first time I really noticed them open up was when I bought the RME 80i2 and I plugged them into the amp portion. And I know people complain the amp portion isn't even that great, but I was listening to a very dynamic track that had a lot of drums, and you could just tell there was a lot of mics there when it was recorded. There was a lot of directional sounds coming at me, and I noticed, like it sounds extended. The stage sounds extended. So yes, gear definitely helps in my experience. The Sennheiser series, well below HD 800, sound more spacious than perhaps it does on other gear. I still wouldn't say that it's ever going to be the most spacious or open sounding headphone, but I just think that the balance it has is quite nice and I like it. And on my gear, it's not the most claustrophobic headphone that I have ever heard.
well, for me, to your point, exec, I switched from a 600 standard production to a 580 black silk with the 600 rails and pads. Took a little bit of time, but I'm convinced enough that the 600 grills are better acoustically after having talked to a couple of internal people with Sennheiser. But it's still narrow. It's still not super wide. But the 580 for me is cohesive enough. There's enough, not to say air, but it isn't cramped. So while the staging is narrow, there's not a lot of overlap when you get into a busier passage. It's not perfect, but it's narrow, but it still isn't cramped and overshadowed. And I have come to appreciate that the 800S or 800, even with SDR, is, as people have talked about, a bit diffuse. It's a bit larger than life. And as I've kind of moved higher end gear, higher end speaker systems, that starts to become apparent. But I still appreciate the two extremes, relative to my needs. And I think the other thing that I've noticed, if I may, is speaker stage can be tied to a room. I've heard some setups, in rooms that were maybe not ideal, and the same speakers, similar DAC and amp, and the stage is just really not lifelike. When I've heard other spaces where the stage is opened up, would you say that that is a accurate or correct observation or correlation?
Oh, for sure,
I
the
would.
stage is room dependent. There's no brainer there. You
Yeah.
can hear the stage's potential, according to is it
Yeah.
Dr. Tool says that you can even if the staging's not functioning the way it should be in a compromised room, human beings somehow are able to sort of be like, I think this would stage better in a less shit room. I don't know how humans can do that, but yeah, there was some research on this that said that humans can even hear the transducer beyond the room. So you can hear a speaker, and apparently, if there's flaws in it that are caused by the room, your brain's able to discern whether they're the room or the transducer.
We can
Yeah.
probably discern, that the reflections are maybe not natural, but that it reflect. Anyways, let's assume that's
Yeah.
correct. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think headphone stage still has some relevance because it's not room dependent, whereas speaker stage is so heavily room dependent. I want a good room, an amazing speaker setup. I don't have access to it right now. So finding a headphone that is not cramped and doesn't have a lot of overshadowing is important. I appreciate that the 800, has that extension and openness, and that even the 580, which is narrow, still has that sense of layer and sense of cohesion without being overly, cramped or busy. If that makes
So I
Yeah.
sense.
think we can all agree as long as the stage is not completely like walked, we're
Yeah.
fairly happy, but we don't prioritize it as like the headphone has to have good staging. Like if it wins in other areas, it's can
Yeah.
most of the time it's not a deal breaker unless you're Lana, then it can sometimes be a deal breaker.
As long
Years
as
ago,
it.
it was a deal breaker for me. Like years ago, I would hear things and it was like, oh, it sounds too close in. But for me, the more experienced I got, the more I could appreciate not having that overly emphasized or overly diffuse sound stage. I
I
had to
should
ground myself a little bit.
I should
What?
add that most of the deal breakers are closed back. And I know that there's some that's not fair because, they're more closed in naturally, but for example, I know that a lot of people say, for example, verite closed is more spacious than the closed back vocals. So I really just want to try a more spacious closed back. Open backs, I don't care about stage quite as much. With closed backs, a really narrow stage does get on my nerves, and that is oftentimes uh, a flaw of closed backs. And I have not heard the HDA 20, but I really wish that they got it right because that was their time to shine and making a larger sound stage on a closed back headphone.
What do you think of the Ether CX? I know there's a lot of flack and a lot of problems with Dan Clark, but what I appreciate about his closeback specifically is he used to tune them with a slight mid-bass recession because he felt that it opened the stage up. And that's something that I do when I equalize speakers in a really closed-in space, is pull the mid-bass back just a little bit to make things not so cramped and overlapping. Because I like the Dan Clark headphones, specifically when I'm monitoring. When I'm mixing, whether it's video that I've done or audio video, they're good for that purpose. If I need to mix on something, I'm going to plug the Ether C into the Percosti M3H, which I think is powerful enough to give me dynamic contrast and slam, but the stage is cohesive enough, open enough, precise enough for me to appreciate and enjoy. I
I
know you've got a
definitely
Ether
agree.
CX too.
Yes, I
You know,
definitely agree. One of the reasons that I did not end up loving my Focal Stelia in the long run was the narrow stage in conjunction with a lot of mid bass. Created, I don't know how to describe it. It's as though that limited space was just being taken over by the mid
consumed,
bass. Yeah, consumed by the mid bass.
eaten,
And yes,
swallowed.
and initially, that sort of thing is very fun. It was my first high-end headphone after, well, I had like like I had Sennheisers, but I really loved that sort of fun, bassy, rich sound. And initially, I was very enamored with it. I was like, oh, there's a lot of mid bass. Like, this is exactly, I'm digging it. But as I lived with it and as I grew and figured out what I liked and didn't like, I just kept being bothered by it. I thought, yeah, this stage is small, and maybe it wouldn't be such an issue if the bass was not, as you said, consuming it. So, yeah, on a closing note there, I would say I care more about stage and closed backs than I do in open backs because if an open back does not have the widest or largest soundstage, I can get over it quite easily. But if a closed back, it has a very narrow stage that is sort of consumed by the bass, then I just get really bothered.
I think so. I think Makia and Lana brought up some interesting things here. In regards to how reflections affect soundstage. So, Makia brought up that in a poor room, speakers can sound unnatural in their presentation because what happens is that you end up with a lot of it becomes less of a sort of point source direction, and as reflections start coming towards you from odd directions, uh, it essentially becomes much less specific to point out where something's coming from. Um, and I think there's a similar thing going on with closed back headphones where because you in a closed headphone you end up with reflections, even below 1 kilohertz, um, that are very difficult to damp out. So you end up with issues in regards to, let's say, time delay not functioning in a natural way like you wouldn't have in a typical well damped open headphone. Now this can be mitigated by, let's say, acoustic metamaterials to cancel out reflections, let's say around like 300 hertz and below and whatnot, or even above. Um, but in all speakers, this remains an issue. Uh, actually, for example, when I was designing my headphone, we so later in the stage of development, we started trying to mess with reflection damping and certain parameters of the driver. And one of the things that we found is that as we started reducing standing waves from the driver itself and doing edge damping, reducing reflections within the baffle structure, well, in front of the baffle, we found that staging did actually seem to improve noticeably in terms of its presentation, and layering became a little bit more accurate to our ears. So yeah, that's all.
All right, well, fair enough. So that was very interesting indeed, and I liked the direction that went in terms of comparing it to speakers, speaker stage, and that kind of thing. So that's interesting. So I'm going to just ask two more questions, and then we'll close it out. One of them will be probably fairly fast, but I want to ask everybody very simply. I'd like you to list two headphones, and if they're the same, that's fine. One is, what is your favorite headphone that you've ever heard sonically? And the second one is, what is your favorite headphone overall? So if we could just go around to everybody on this one, why don't we start with Ko?
Pass. Gonna need some time to think.
Okay, fair enough.
Smuts just like drops that on you, and he's just like, "All right, now go."
I can start. So
Okay.
my favorite sonically of all time is Abyss TC. And I think my favorite, is probably TC twice. I'm guessing, if I think about it. I mean, if I say, okay, let me say sonically it's TC, and then if I just say just pure favorite, and it has a kind of special place in my heart, is Atticus. Atticus, I just love that headphone because it's so fun and it's so engaging, and it's a headphone that always never fails to make me smile, basically. So those are my two.
You go, mate.
I guess it's a bit new, but I was at the end of the show. I mean, I really think Carbon's going to take the spot as one of the better, if not one of the best sounding ones that I've heard. Some of the staging cues were not quite what I was looking for, but I have to recognize that the room was noisy. But just the combination of speed, texture, and timbre were excellent. Now, the second question, don't laugh, but like my favorite headphone of all time, everything considered, price, convenient sound, is the Koss Porta Pro. Still, I have 4 of them, 2 wired and 2 Bluetooth. Yeah, everywhere that I go, I have one.
See, that's why I asked for both two, because I knew that if I just said what's your favorite headphone, it's going to be like Koss Porta Pro or this $10 IEM, or, like, you know what I mean. That's why I wanted one of them is like just Sonics, you know.
Wait, hold on. You said, hold on. You said headphone, not IEM. If you said IEM, I could have given you an answer like fast.
Okay. I want to include IEM. I'm including IEM.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now, Porta Pro, Yaxi pads, and equalization. No matter where I am in life, no matter what's in my hand, I can throw it on, equalize it, put it on my ears, and it's happiness. And I'm curious to hear what Ko's favorite IEM is, or Executor's favorite pair of headphones.
Okay, yeah, so I'll go since that's made it so much easier.
Okay.
So favorite, I guess my favorite, like right now, is Verite Closed. I cannot get enough of Verite Closed.
Nice.
Love it so much. The spaciousness, the tint of warmth, the bass is just fantastic, and just he nailed that one. And plus, if you get a stabilized one, you can get it in the color of your choice. And I got purple, and I love it. It's made for me.
Making me want one.
Oh, look, you have to get one. Just wait for No Nut November. It's worth it.
Okay.
Okay.
Very nice.
Well, that's sort of what we all call it. I mean, ZMF has an event in November, and he's hinted very strongly he's going to do something special for this one. And I'm hoping and guessing it'll be a stabilized Atticus.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So yeah, he's gonna have a lot of stabilized headphones in November. So just if you can wait, please wait.
Okay.
So Verite closed, and then favorite gear of all time, bar none, Mason Fable Sound.
Yeah.
That is, oh my god, I love that IEM. And the thing is, it was difficult initially. I wanted to say Elysian X, but Mason Fable Sound does something. It's just tuned so well. You know, I can take it with me and just I'll be fine as a main IEM. With Elysian X, I need something to sort of complement its excited nature. So yeah, Fable Sound with the bone conduction and unique melodies tuning makes it for me the best set of all time.
I guess I'll go next, and I feel like mine won't be surprising to anyone. My favorite of all time is Abyss TC on tubes, my LTA Z10. However, like the one that really touches my heart is the Black Silk HT650, also on tubes. I'm currently
Nice.
borrowing Ish's Black Silk 650, and I swear I A-B'd it to my silver one. I A-B'd it for about an hour total over the past few days, and I swear they are different. So unless I'm hallucinating, which I might be, uh, like even if I am hallucinating, whatever, I'm quite happy that I managed to find one, and my pal Jason bought one for me, and he's gonna send it my way. So
Here's
yeah,
the thing. Here's the thing,
go ahead.
Lana. Reality sucks. So if you're hallucinating, just dive right in.
I agree.
Yeah. Shout out to Jason as our resident European importer. He has found some outstanding stuff and made it easy to get here in the States.
I agree. Yeah. I was panicking because I was searching the entire market for a black silk after Ish sent me his, and I fell in love with it. And there were none anywhere. And Jason happened to send me a local site to him once where he got your 580 from Makaya. And I instinctively just looked there, and there was a single 650 for sale, and it happened to be black silk. So I messaged him, and I was like, "Hey, bro, can you help a girl out? Can you get this for me?" And he did it. So, love you, Jason. You're the best.
I'm still tempted to see if he can find me a Basslight K1000. I know it's not the best thing in the world anymore, but there have been some tracks where it's just been like, what? Max fun, max engagement, max madness. So
Yeah, the
fingers
second one I
crossed.
want to get,
K1000 is pretty funny.
I
It
just
does
want to
some
say I
things.
really want a AKG K501 because I heard that
Ooh.
Micaiah, you brought it to a Headphone meet, and I loved it so
Me and
much.
Tom both, yeah, me and Tom both have it. I'm not giving up mine.
I'll
The
show you mine.
K501 and the 580. Go ahead, go ahead.
I have a 501. You want it?
You have a 501?
I have a 400 and a 501.
Do you like your 501?
It's pretty bright. I stuck some ZMF universe pads on it because I was bored. It was actually pretty nice.
Well, if you ever want to sell it, just hit me up.
I I don't know. It holds a special place in my heart just because I think it looks cool. But I have a K400 as well, which is like literally the same thing,
Fair
but
enough.
without like leather that's slowly deteriorating.
Yeah, I found one for 70 euros, but it's on a Serbian site, and even though I can read a solid 60% of what's on there, I'm like, how do I buy this? I don't know.
Yeah,
So someone on eBay is selling one though, but it's like $300 or something like that.
it's a terrible price.
I paid 220 with shipping on German eBay like 2 years ago, 2 years ago to get mine. It was in
I
good
paid like
condition.
$100.
Yeah, envious.
It was in pretty scuffed condition, but yeah, I tried fixing it up as much as I could.
Well,
I
who's
think my K400 is like $70.
All right, who wants to go next?
well? I guess I'm the least qualified to speak about experiences with headphones because I've been pretty limited in the number of headphones I've listened to. But there's a whole area we're missing, and I'll get to that in a second. But everybody here, I'm sure, knows that I have ZMF auteurs that I love for most of my music. And then when I'm looking for a rock out a little bit more, some different clears just for a change up. Excuse me. But I think the one section that we're missing and that I use a lot, there's nothing special at all. Absolutely just a convey sound. And it's the earbuds that come with the, Apple iPhones are used to. And I use mine for audiobooks, podcasts, talk radio. I use them a lot in that fashion. And I don't need the high fidelity, but they convey the information I'm looking for. It's different information than music. It's intellectual stimulation, and they're comfortable. You can put them in your ear and lay your head on a pillow and listen and get some rest and relax. But there's a whole section of headphones that utilitarian use that I use mine a lot for. Probably more than audio for my other two headsets because I
Yeah,
use most of the time.
I'm with you there. And nobody judge me, okay? I use Skull Candy inked earbuds for things like that, like working out or reading an audiobook. I think they're like $20, if not less, on Amazon.
Right. Yeah,
Hey,
and there's no judging here. If there is, they shouldn't be here because we're all equals and friends. But yeah, I thought that was a section that wasn't mentioned by anybody, and I think it's significant because I, for one, and maybe when y'all get a little older, you'll turn to that type of information. Love podcasts. You don't need video for a podcast or to have information conveyed to you. Yet you can enjoy it almost as much as just listening to some great music. So
So
Hold
adding
on, hold
to
on, Nick. Hold on, Nick. Porta Pro is like what, 30, $40? It's cheap AF. I have four or five of them, man. I'm never gonna get rid of them. Cheap as dirt, lifetime warranty. I'm rolling forever.
right, as long as they serve a purpose to you, they're valuable.
Definitely.
To what your use is, and therefore they're uh, like many of you said, you love them for their own particular purpose. So I thought they needed an honorable mention for the dirt cheap utilitarian uh, purveyor and um, headphone.
so adding to your point, Nick, I do
Yeah,
have a set that's just like that.
there
So
you go.
I bought a custom Digenous blue leather case. I imported it from Seoul for the wired AirPods that come with the iPhone because
Exactly.
I use those all the time for, as you said, for podcasts, work conferences. I use it for this podcast as well. I use it for everything that has to do with work or information. And I have two pairs on standby. I love these with the lightning adapter. I love it. They just work. The
Yep.
microphone just works. And I've got, again, two more pairs and I put it in a nice leather case. I know it makes no sense, but I just like it.
That's how we roll. That's a good thing. And I thought, like I said, they needed honorable mention because we do use them. I bet everybody uses them almost on a daily basis.
Yeah. And that makes sense because it's you. I'm just surprised you didn't get a gold leafed case for them instead.
Well, the golden AirPods cost 40 grand and you could have only got them at Christie's. So I couldn't have gotten those.
Gold-plated AirPods? Where?
No, they're made out of gold. It's not gold
They're just
plated.
made
It's
out of
solid.
gold?
That's solid gold. Yeah, it was designed by what's it called? Johnny Ive and Mark Newson, and it was up for charity auction. I believe it's $30,000
Holy
starting. So yeah.
crap. I've never seen that before. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love these podcasts. These are so much fun. Thanks, guys, gals.
Where they do the like the blue sapphire, crystal embedded for charity. I hope you can pick up a pair to match your
Oh
blue
yeah,
leather
for
case.
sure. Yeah, what I'll do a Sonic Visions tour. How's that?
There you go.
Please do.
Sounds pretty good.
I think who's left? I think Ko, Juan, and I can't remember Micaiah if you said it or not.
Micaiah went on about his sports, bro.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
Portobello. Sorry,
I
sorry.
think
Yeah.
I think I'm the last one, and I'll just be quick. I think best overall ever that I've heard. You know, I've heard HE1, TC, most things. Not the new stuff at Can Jam, but I'm gonna go with Susvara. Just like comfort. Like I just think it's a really great all rounder. I don't think it has any glaring flaws. I think it's just solid top to bottom. And if you had to be on an island with one headphone, that would probably be it. You know, for me. And my personal favorite would probably be I'd probably be agreeing with Lana. The HD 650 for me. I know the HD 800 has a really special place to me as well. The SDR original HD 800, lower the serial number, the better memes. But yeah, the HD 650 has been with me since the very start. It's been through the evolution of my system over 5 years, and every time I come back to it, every time I improve my system, I just keep coming back to it because it just keeps going. It keeps scaling to
Yeah.
unbelievable sort of levels. So I don't know. I'm going to keep that meme going and say, yeah, HD 650s for the win as my overall favorite headphone. And I mean, I could buy a Susvara, but man, the HD 650, it just it does it for me. You know, HD 800. I do have a warmer headphone as a sort of an alternative for late night listening, but I could definitely live with HD 650. You know, even in the current market of insane headphones, I would say that there's still space for these headphones that are 25 years old.
Here, here. I agree. Good choice.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, I have to agree too. Initially with the 650s, I didn't really take them that seriously, but since pairing them with the tube amp, I'm actually enjoying them right now more than my 800S. I really love the sound of them.
Yeah, tubes really made me re-fall in love with 650s. I already loved them, and then hearing them with tubes, yeah, like honestly, if even though the Abyss was the best on tubes that I've like ever heard, if you were to ask me if I had to keep the Abyss or 650s, I would keep the 650s.
It's like that, hey. It's just a bit strange, but it's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
and
I
when you're
think
gonna get yourself,
I think I read Lana you talking about selling your TC once you heard the Black Silk.
Honestly,
oh,
I wouldn't be mad about it, to be honest. Like if I sold my Abyss, um, and had 650, I would just buy another tube amp and use the rest of the money to put towards whatever crazy thing I'd be buying next. But yeah, I'm not saying I'm doing that, but I wouldn't be opposed. I wouldn't be mad if I just had 650. Well, I have more than just 650s, but I wouldn't be mad if Abyss was gone, which is strange because it does so many things well and it's amazing and it's it's really hard. I don't know what I'm explaining. My brain feels kind of jumbled, but
Oh no, I 100% know where you're coming from, Lana, because I had the Abyss and I loved the speaker sort of presentation that Ko sort of described, and it really stuck around for a while. But at a point, I kind of was like, well, if I had to choose between living with one, the HD 650 or the Abyss, I was happy just living with the HD 650. So my funds went back into trying to upgrade the rest of my system rather than sticking with a transducer that I could live without. So right now
yeah.
I'm listening to HD 650s from like a $20,000 chain to listening to you guys, and I still I think it just keeps going. It's crazy how much it keeps upgrading.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is insane. The scaling ability is. I talked to my friend Shiroz, who has he has a lot of the top of the line stuff up like planars and like he has SR1A and Susvara and TC. And I asked him this question because he has 800. I think he had 650. Uh, do the dynamic headphones scale more? Especially Sennheisers, do they scale more than the planars? And he said no. He said the planars scale more, but I don't know. Like, you guys know better than me. The scaling ability is I can't believe it.
Um,
That opinion has been pretty refuted. That planers have like a resolution cap, and their scaling ability is in my opinion quite quite limited. Like what
Indeed.
you
Yeah.
get is kind of what you get. But you know, obviously better gear, you get a slightly better sound. But like the way that you know you improve a tube system, you go from like push pull to set with an HD 650. It's like night and day different. Whereas a planer, you kind of have to like really sit and think and be like, oh man, I can. You struggle to hear the nuances and the difference. But I
Yeah.
don't know. For me, dynamics, it's just like night and day. When you switch to these different systems, like it's just you can really hear the system for what it's doing. My opinion.
Yeah.
Not everybody likes them, but yeah, I'd agree that the planers have a bit of a ceiling, a bit of a cap. Dynamics don't necessarily have as strong as one. I like the electrostat presentation, and I found that it's an aggressive difference moving up and down. You know, so if you can get past some of the 1K forwardness that some electrostats have and the speed of it, they tend to really transform. But that said, I still have an electrostat and a dynamic in my collection because for me they have different strengths and they present things in the music that I like a little bit differently. You know, I couldn't limit myself down to just one, but I do feel like there is something to be said about how well that they scale. But the price to performance is very different. 650 on a 20K chain is probably still a lower, you know, cost than getting a $20,000 electrostat chain with a $600 electrostat. So there's definitely something to be said about how much dynamics improve. You know, just
Oh, you cut out there.
Mm.
I think Juan, did you go?
No, I didn't.
Okay, go ahead.
Probably should come as no surprise to anyone, but the headphone that I, designed roughly to my own preference and worked on for 2 years is probably my favorite thing. So that would be the Everest. But that aside, I'd say pretty much everything like Cosmics in the low end space will always hold a special place in my heart.
Nice. So yeah, I think that I'm gonna call it here because we've run kind of a bit over time. But I really enjoyed this episode, and you guys that went out to the show, I really appreciate you guys bringing the impressions to us, the early impressions. I'm sure with time, a lot of these new products will start kind of percolating throughout the server, and we'll hear more impressions about them. It's a pretty exciting time, especially for headphones and kind of portable stuff. Any final words or thoughts?
Yeah, if you guys can, check out Sound ID by SonarWorks. It's quite impressive.
Very cool.
Cool. All right. Well, I will leave it at that. This is episode 7, so either next week or the week after we'll have episode 8. And until next time, take care.
Take care, everyone.
All right. See y'all.
So yeah, bye.